Hi, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the Capitals Report, our trade deadline special here on the Monumental Network. Al Koken and Alan May with you. We're going to hear from George McPhee a little later on and cover all of the activity during a very busy and very intriguing trade deadline. And Alan May, one of the things that happened yesterday was the Capitals were one of the teams that really got things going. And I remember a little back and forth text conversation with you when we heard that Dustin Penner was acquired from the Anaheim Ducks for a fourth-round draft choice, and your response was yes with about 3 exclamation points. Why did you like that deal?
Well, the main reason is that the Caps needed a left winger with a lot of size, and Dustin Penner, 6'4", 247 pounds. He's coming from the best team in the National Hockey League right now. He plays well with top-line players, good on the power play, uses his size to advantage. He's only had one team really in the National Hockey League where the coaches didn't like him, and that was Craig McTavish with the Edmonton Oilers. But it seems now that the Edmonton Oilers are trying to load their team up with large guys like Dustin Penner. Maybe it was the other guys that they didn't need, and it was more players like this. I think he's a valuable acquisition. I thought last year would have been a great time to get him, but I'm happy with them doing this right now.
Dustin Penner has kind of got a reputation as being a bit of a character. One of the things he tweeted out immediately after he was traded was, hey, President Obama, can I stay with you? I'm going to need a place to bill it. And he's a guy who has a fondness for pancakes, and the deal was done on National Pancake Day. But one of the things you also hear about Dustin Penner, besides that Stanley Cup pedigree, likes to get to the front of the net. And how many times have we said on Comcast Sportsnet the words net presence when it comes to talking about what the Capitals need to improve on?
Certainly, and he scores some big goals. He scores some huge goals in the National Hockey League playoffs. He's won 2 Stanley Cups. And you look at Dustin Penner, he's the great type of player, a lot like Mike Knuble, understands what his game is. There's nothing pretty about what he does. He's not going to wow you with his skating ability. He's not lightning fast. He lumbers, but he still gets there. He's not slow. It's tough in front of the net, and you can't teach big. You want to have big players as much as you can. You see the teams that go the furthest in the playoffs are teams that have large defense, large wingers, players that can battle for the puck. This is a huge addition for the Capitals, and they really did get things rolling throughout the National Hockey League yesterday when they did this. And as always, you never hear when the Caps are making a trade. It just happens.
And he is an unrestricted free agent, so the Caps either have to just let him walk at the end of the year or maybe re-sign him. The cost was a fourth-round draft choice that the Capitals got from the Mighty Ducks, or the Ducks of Anaheim, in exchange for Matthew Perreault at the beginning of the year. So that was the first of 2 moves that George McPhee would make on the day. The second, we knew it was probably going to come. Martin Erat has asked twice to be traded, and finally the Capitals obliged, found the Phoenix Coyotes ready to take Martin Erat, and maybe more importantly, his $4.5 million salary off the books for the Washington Capitals. But the Capitals did get some interesting assets in return.
Yeah, certainly they did. And it's huge that they did get rid of Erat's salary, because you look at 4.5 next year as well. And we're waiting and waiting. We saw Klesla go twice on waivers this season. I was wondering why the Caps didn't pick him up, but it was all about a salary dump, getting rid of guys, getting rid of Erat and his salary. You bring in a guy like Dustin Penner, 6'4" versus 5'10" or whatever Erat is, not dumping on him, but Dustin Penner has been getting things done this year. You look at the other players in the trade. Chris Brown is the guy. I live in Texas. I've been watching him play since he was in Pee-wees. A big player, very good hockey player, played AAA in the Dallas area, and then he goes to the U.S. National Development Team program, which is huge when you can get players there. He's 6'2", maybe a little bit taller, very good skater, had an excellent career at the University of Michigan, and last year in the American Hockey League, 29 goals, which I believe led all rookies in goal scoring. So there's a player right there, can play center, right wing, really left wing if you want him to, but once again, you can't teach big. He's a guy that you got to love that the Caps have. It'd be a lot like Michael Latta. When he was thrown into the trade last year, this is what George was probably waiting for, trying to pick this guy off. Without a doubt, the Caps scouting staff has seen this guy play plenty of times, and they know what he can bring. I expect him to be wearing a Capitals uniform in the not-too-distant future.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting when you talk about what the Capitals acquired in all of this. And that fourth-round pick is a 2015 fourth-round pick that could have some value possibly before the trade deadline is done at 3 o'clock. We're about, a little less than 10 minutes away from that. And we've seen how fourth-round picks, the Caps used one for Dustin Penner. We've seen fourth-round picks used by Anaheim for Stefan Robideau. We've seen fourth-round picks used for goaltenders. So if George McPhee is going to make one final move, that fourth-round pick that was acquired could have some real value as well. It's interesting when we talk about this trade deadline, and we'll break down in just a moment a few of the deals that kind of resonate around the league. And there was a big one today that's going to have a major impact on the Capitals division in the Metropolitan Division, and one of the teams they're chasing in the New York Rangers. But you were a man who was traded more on this day, the trade deadline day in the National Hockey League, than any other player in history. So you know what these guys are going through as they wait till 3 o'clock and beyond.
It's kind of a dubious honor. The thing I wish had happened is I played on 12 different National Hockey League teams over 15 years. But yeah, to get traded on trade deadline day is a shock because, we didn't have Twitter, we didn't have email, so all of a sudden when it happens, my first trade came out of the blue. I was in absolute shock and just blew me away. My coach was upset with me for getting traded. The next trade that happened, my second year, I knew that was coming. I wouldn't sign a new contract with the Oilers, and I got traded to the Los Angeles Kings. My bags were packed, I was ready to go, and I couldn't wait to get there. And it worked out for the best for me. Even my time in Edmonton, I didn't want to get traded there, but 2.5-hour practices every day in the American Hockey League. The skating got a lot better. Wasn't necessarily happy all the time, but they were hard practices, did it every day, and enabled me to eventually be good enough to play in the National Hockey League.
What is the atmosphere now as the Capitals get ready for a very important game tonight in Philadelphia against the Flyers? What is the atmosphere now in the Capitol room once this deadline passes and guys know they're either here or something has happened, but knowing that the Caps have made some additions, particularly a guy like Penner, who we anticipate not only to see in a Caps uniform tonight wearing number 17, but also playing on that top line with Ovechkin and Backstrom. Is this the sort of thing that galvanizes a team, or is everybody still worn out from worrying, am I going to be the guy who has to pack my bags next?
First of all, I don't think anyone slept today. Every single player in the Capitals, not even if they're not worrying about getting traded, but seeing what's going on. This is kind of like having your ear next to the wall and listening to your neighbors argue or something like that. You want to know what's going on. And it's a very exciting day to see all the players that are going around. They're all going to be talking about St. Louis and Callahan getting traded, all the other deals that are out there. But certainly yesterday there was a sigh of relief with the Capitals. That helped them, that they got rid of Erat, a player that did not want to play here, a player that wasn't fitting in. They bring in a big guy like Dustin Penner. Believe me, the Stanley Cups carry a lot of clout. Troy Brouwer has one. Now Penner is the wise guy in the room that has two. And the players are relieved with that. Are there other trades that could happen? I'm sure they're excited about the other thing. Klesla being here in the American Hockey League right now, having Chris Brown. The players in the American League know who he is. But once this all goes down, players are going to be a little bit worn out. A lot of players are on edge until about 3:30 when they know that they haven't been traded, wondering where they're going. It's going to be a little bit of a relief. But the good thing is they've got an extra hour to catch up today with the game being at 8 o'clock tonight.
Now, the Philadelphia Flyers, the Capitals' opponent tonight, did make a couple of deals, one yesterday and one just a few moments ago. Let's run down some of the trades, particularly in the Metropolitan Division, and there were some big names dealt and some big names added. The number one trade of the day, without question, and maybe this will be the story of the entire trading deadline, Martin St. Louis from the Tampa Bay Lightning to the New York Rangers in exchange for their captain. Remember, St. Louis was the captain of the Tampa Bay Lightning in exchange for Ranger captain Ryan Callahan, a first-round pick and a second-round pick. Alan May, without question, the biggest deal of the day, but quickly as we see, Tomo Ruutu picked up from New Jersey. We see additions from the Pittsburgh Penguins as well. Andrew McDonald traded to the Philadelphia Flyers by the New York Islanders, and the Islanders now, or the Flyers have also traded Andre Mazzaros to the Boston Bruins, so some shuffling there. But does that St. Louis trade just blow everything out of the water? Well,
it's certainly huge, and no one had anticipated this, and then we heard how upset he was and requested a trade from the Lightning after being snubbed for the Olympic team. Goes to the New York Rangers. He's going to be paired with Brad Richards again. That's a formidable punch. He's a better goal scorer than Callahan. He's not as physical, not as gritty, not a mucker grinder, but he's a top-line player. Makes those players that play with him a lot better. I can't say that for Callahan, but Callahan brings a lot of character to the Tampa Bay Lightning. But immediately the Capitals are trying to catch the Rangers. Now the Rangers have some scoring punch that they didn't have before, and that's going to be a huge boost to their morale on that team. And also getting rid of all of the room rumors of Callahan's contract, and now you just have the players in the room that are in the room. It's a big time for them. I still think something's up with the Philadelphia Flyers. They now have about $6.5 million left in cap space by moving Mazzaros and the players that they've eliminated from their lineup. So I have a feeling that they're not done. They're up to something big right now.
The Pittsburgh Penguins, we saw, made a move. They pick up an interesting player in Marcel Gotch, but there were a lot of people who thought the Penguins were poised, like they did last year, to make a bigger splash. There still is a few minutes left. They still may be working on something. We understood that if Ryan Kessler was going to be traded from Vancouver, Pittsburgh was ready to make a big splash, but you understand that Vancouver ownership and management has said, no, we're not trading Ryan Kessler.
Yeah, and that's from the Twitter feeds of the guys in Toronto right now, the main guys that are working the trade deadline shows up there. And one of the things that's interesting, I did hear this the other day, that Kessler had a list of teams, and Philadelphia was one of the teams on that list that he had. And now all of a sudden, Philadelphia has a whole bunch of cap space to add another top-line player like Kessler. So it wouldn't surprise me that happens. The Pittsburgh Penguins, they're still waiting in limbo according to Twitter right now. So there's a lot of things that are happening, and really this is the time. We'll know in about 20 minutes all of the trades that go down, because they've still got to get processed and registered through the National Hockey League. That's why I usually wait, and I still wouldn't be surprised to see if the Caps do something, and we'll probably know in about 15, 20 minutes.
Now, one of the other teams in that Metropolitan Division, the Columbus Blue Jackets, they trade away a guy they gave up a lot for last year in Marian Gaborik at the trade deadline. They trade him to the Los Angeles Kings. They end up picking up a very interesting forward in Matt Fratton, but they've also just picked up a defenseman from Edmonton in Nick Schultz.
Yeah, well, right now you have to wonder what Columbus, they've got a couple key injuries right now on defense. There's also a rumor of their captain, Jack Johnson, being on the move, which would be very surprising to me. For the way they've played this season, they've surprised everybody. They had a horrendous start, and then they've really come on strong. Excellent goaltending, really solid defense. They're a north-south team, but Matt Fratton's another guy that can chip in with goals here and there. They've got a lot of guys that are hard workman-like forwards that can score some goals. Just another guy that adds skill. Gaborik wasn't ever really a fit there. He goes to the LA Kings, and they've got so many guys that can score goals there. They're big. He's not their typical profile of a player in the size that they want, but he has speed. He's got finish, and you know what? Everyone's happy in Los Angeles when they're not playing hockey. The lifestyle is pretty awesome, pretty relaxed down in the Manhattan Beach area, and that goes a long way. You go from a place like Columbus, not saying anything bad about it, but LA's a pretty nice setup. They got a phenomenal team, very good head coach, great fans to play in front of. So I look for some inspired hockey out of him.
This is a special Capitals report, the trade deadline issue of it here on the Monumental Network. Al Koken and Alan May with you. We'll be hearing from Capitals Vice President and General Manager George McPhee. He will be joining us hopefully on set before he meets with the media. Either way, we'll hear from him. He has a press conference scheduled for 4 o'clock. And speaking of George McPhee, let's listen to a couple of things that George McPhee said recently about what the Capitals need and some possibilities that he may be making some moves.
We've had some young guys come up and play really well in Carrick and Patrick Way and Brulette. Certainly like the way the other guys are playing. Orlov is a guy that we said that would get an opportunity. He's got his opportunity. He's playing really well. And Carlson and Green and Olsner are solid, and we've got some young guys knocking on the door and some other veteran guys here. So I think we're getting to the point where we wanted to be at the start of the season with the way they're lined up and the way they can play. Our PK hasn't been good enough, but again, we liked it just before the break. So there are different elements at different times. But again, I like the way we started to play just before the break, and we're hoping that we can get back to that level and even exceed it. We like our goaltending. We've drafted these players. We've developed them. We think they're capable of being really good in this league, and they've shown that they can be really good. And now's the time.
Well, and now is the time. The trade deadline is officially passed. We've just passed 3 o'clock Eastern time, but that doesn't mean that moves still may not be announced, and we'll have it right here on the Monumental Network for you on this special edition of the Capitals report. We hear what George McPhee said before he started making some maneuvers. A couple of things Alan made, though, that kind of add into the mix that intrigues me. We talked about the possibility that a guy like Rostislav Klesla, who they acquired last night in the Martin Erat trade, could be that veteran left defenseman to help out on the Capitals' blue line. But we're not really factoring in, because it's almost been out of sight, out of mind, a guy like Jack Hillen. He's had a couple of games in Hershey. We anticipate that he will be activated tonight to play, with Dmitry Orlov being suspended for a couple of games. Is George McPhee now looking at what he had to do in a completely different prism than maybe the rest of us are, including Hillen into the mix, and probably now including a guy like Evgeny Kuznetsov into the mix?
Well, the big thing with Jack Hillen is last year, the same thing in the shortened season, the lockout season, he was hurt the first home game and had some torn rib cartilage. When he finally got back into the lineup late in the season, the Caps really went on a tear, and a lot of people forget about him because he's not a big offensive guy. But he did get involved very well with the team. He's an excellent skater. He plays a lot like Calle Johansson, a little more physical, a little harder on the pass, not as dazzling with the rush, never going to see him on the power play like we used to see Calle. But he's a very good player. Get him out there with Mike Green. He's not just going to throw the puck back to Mike all the time. He doesn't get caught in bad defensive situations. He learned well in his time in Long Island. He learned a lot more in Nashville. He's a very, very good hockey player, and he's been sorely missed. And when you look at the Capitals, a lot of people have pointed to the goaltending this year, and one of the reasons I look at, this guy wasn't getting on the ice, and it'll help everyone involved having Jack Hillen back here. It's a huge upgrade right now, in my opinion. A veteran player, very professional, excellent skating. He does a lot of really good things when he doesn't have the puck, and he doesn't just get it and make bad plays up the center of the ice. Not saying that anyone else is doing that right now, but he knows where to play the puck, how to get rid of it, when to get rid of it. He's going to be a huge addition. It may take a little while for him to still come back from this injury. It'd be a lot of energy and anxious play out of him tonight, and he's still got to go through that little bit of a lull when players come back, but it's good for the Caps to have him back.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question his experience is such a huge factor for the Washington Capitals, and in the way Adam Oates wants to coach, it's not that Adam Oates wouldn't mind a more physical presence on that Capitals blue line, but we see what his system is all about. It's all about getting that pass and getting that puck out of the zone and getting the forwards with speed through the neutral zone and into the opposition zone as quickly and as swiftly as possible. And one of the things that Jack Hillen does, as Alan just mentioned, is that ability to make that first pass, to carry or skate it out of the zone if needed, to foil the opposition forecheck. And those are things that are kind of very lost, very subtle things. You don't have to remind me personally about how people, I thought, completely missed the boat on a guy like Larry Murphy. We still hear people that do the whoop, whoop, whoop over a defenseman they don't like. Well, Larry Murphy is in the Hall of Fame. And he was a Hall of Fame player when he was here, but because he didn't put people into the eighth row with a check, the way Rod Langway and other Capital defensemen that he was playing with, people thought he was soft. People thought he was ineffective. Well, the biggest goal, arguably, in Capitals history, the Dale Hunter overtime goal to beat the Philadelphia Flyers, doesn't get made if Larry Murphy doesn't make that incredible pass out of the zone. And sometimes I think those type of defensemen kind of get lost between, the fans that just see defensemen as only one-dimensional players, which is rock'em sock'em, which I agree the Capitals could use more of, but it's either rock'em sock'em and keep the puck in your zone, or get the puck out of your zone and let these elite forwards do something with it. And if Jack Hillen can provide that, the Capitals ultimately are better off.
Yeah, a simple game is a lot better out of defensemen, and certainly guys that have that slick passing ability, the one pass to get out of the zone. You only want to be in your zone. The good teams, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds at the most. It's quick outlet passes. The defensemen who do that best are very valuable in the National Hockey League. And you don't want them just throwing it off the glass all the time or sending it hard rims around the boards that are very tough, and the near wingers have to muck it up at the blue line. So anytime you can get a guy back in the lineup that's good with the outlet pass, you're very happy for that. You can't just have every guy just pounding the puck off the wall all the time.
Now, one of the other possible additions, and again, this had to be a factor in what George McPhee was thinking, is what seems to be the imminent arrival of Evgeny Kuznetsov. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting. An elite player playing the last few years in the Continental Hockey League over in Russia, but says, I'm on my way, and he's going to be staying with Alex Ovechkin along with Kuznetsov's wife. The big question, though, is we know there is an elite skill level there. How quickly can that skill level translate to a brand new team, a brand new system, and a brand new ice surface?
Well, everything that we've heard about him is he's a lot more mature than most people that are coming over from there. He's got a good command of the English language right now. Adam Oates has said that in talking to him when he's been interviewed. He's a little bit more grown up than even the average North American player that's played. He's been married for a while. He's not, from everything I hear, he's not a party guy. He's not into that lifestyle. He's all business. He's all hockey. He's had a couple of amazing seasons in the KHL, but then again, it is the KHL. What I do like, it's a younger player coming from the Continental Hockey League, not an older player that's been corrupted and lazy. Every time I've watched him play, he's been electrifying. He goes for it. So now it'll be a matter of adapting to his line mates and his teammates if and when he does sign here. But I do expect him to be here. From everything I've been reading the last few days, I expect him to be here by the weekend. But I'm not sure how soon until the Caps would add his contract to the roster and to their cap, because you're going to have to manipulate the salary cap.
But how quickly could he adjust? He's played pro hockey, we get that. So he's gone and competed against men, so that doesn't seem to be the concern. But even Alex Ovechkin made the statement yesterday. There is concern about the adaptation for a guy like Kuznetsov, who is more of a skill player, where Ovechkin, with all his skill, was the bull in the china shop. It didn't make any difference what size the ice was. Alex Ovechkin will be happy to go around you or go through you. Kuznetsov is going to have to adjust to the North American game. How long do you think that would take, considering the Caps only have 20 games left?
I think the biggest thing that I think with the puck on the offensive side of it, he's going to be, it's too easy. He's an elite offensive player. When we've seen him over here at development camp, you can't really put anything into development camp. He was by far the best player on the ice. And really, almost arguably, you could say he shouldn't have been out there. You see him in the World Junior Championships when he was over here. He tore through everybody. He's played on North American-sized rinks. He's going to be great when he has the puck. He'll adapt with whatever line mates he has. It's going to be a matter of whether players catch up. Now, the hard part is how he stops on pucks in the defensive zone, that he's not swinging down low. If he's going to be in a position of center or wing, that's to be debated yet. But they have to make sure that he understands how to play the game without the puck. There's got to be a great amount of work ethic, because one of the things with the Caps' complex defensive system, when players are on the back check, there's a lot of things that they don't do that other teams do that take a little while to get a handle on. And if there's a breakdown in that, it can make everyone on the ice look pretty bad.
I think you'll agree one of the things that stood out to me once the Capitals had possession of the rights for Yevgeny Kuznetsov was then the next year when he literally put that Russian junior national team on his back and won in Buffalo in the World Junior Championship. It was truly amazing to watch him when the Russian team was down against the Finns. Basically did all the scoring, got an assist, and scored all the goals, and then was the key player in that championship game. So we have seen him, at least in North America, on a North American rink. Again, it's against junior competition, elite junior competition as it may be, but there seemed to have been something in his game that I saw in those two contests that didn't say to me, I'm just an elite player. He was a captain, and he led and played like a captain, and that type of attitude, if it can translate into an NHL body and an NHL uniform, could be a huge boost for the Capitals.
Well, you know, one of the things that we all heard about Kuznetsov is that when he first decided that he was going to stay in Russia after being drafted, he's never made any bones about it. He was very honest in the fact that he wanted to go back and play in the KHL. He wanted to play in the Olympics. And what he did say is when he came over to the National Hockey League, he didn't want to struggle. He wanted to come over and dominate when he was on the ice. He wanted to be one of the best rookies in the National Hockey League. And I look at that type of fire and the thought process that he has in developing his game. He didn't want to come over and be in and out of the lineup. He didn't want to go down in the American League and play that. He wanted to come over and play right now when he decided to come over after learning how to play over there. He's been a guy that there's nothing that can be said bad about getting a lot of ice time. Mm-hmm. He led his team in ice time every game that he was playing. I think the injuries are a little bit overblown. I still expect this guy to come over here and really tear it up. He's got an elite fitness level. As long as the bumps and bruises are gone, I expect him to do very well once he gets here.
This is a special edition of the Capitals Report here on the Monumental Network as we cover the trade deadline here from the Kettler Ice Rink in Arlington, Virginia. And we'll let Alan May take a look at his Twitter account and update us on any other moves that have been made in the National Hockey League. But as we get ready for that, we remind you we'll be hearing from Capitals Vice President and General Manager George McPhee. Hopefully he'll be able to join us on set. We will at least be able to cover his press conference that is scheduled right here at Kettler Iceplex for 4 o'clock. Now, one of the things, though, that is really paramount in this trade deadline day is, can you improve your team and can you improve your playoff positioning? Let's remind everybody right now, to the start of the day, where the Capitals are when it comes to the Eastern Conference and that battle for a final playoff spot. They're sitting there right now out of the first 3 in the Metropolitan Division by a point. They are also out of that final wild card spot that is currently being held by the Columbus Blue Jackets by a point. The Rangers and Columbus, Rangers have the tiebreaker right now, so you can see how just that little point that was lost, and it's no little point that was lost on Sunday when the Capitals blew that 4-2 lead against the Philadelphia Flyers, how dramatic that changed everything. It would put the Flyers down at 69 points, would have put the Capitals up at 69 points, and a virtual dead heat for both the wild card and that final 3rd spot in the Metropolitan Division. But that's why all of those teams have made some sort of move today, and it's fascinating to see how this would play out. But Alan, what's also very intriguing to me, at least to this point, unless you've got some new information, the Detroit Red Wings have been pretty much virtually silent in doing anything.
Well, there's reports right now that Thomas Vanek has been traded from the Isles. They're just waiting to hear where. Matt Molson, Cordy McCormick supposedly are going to San Jose. So there's a deal. So, or actually to Minnesota. Scratch that.
Going to Minnesota.
Matt Molson, Cordy, and we heard Vanek was originally going there. But right now we're reading that has happened. And you look at Detroit Red Wings. They've got a couple of key injuries. They could be a team that's in on Vanek right now. We should know just in a couple of minutes. But the good news is the key injuries for them, the Capitals are going to be watching them every single game from here on out. And even though the Capitals did lose that point on the weekend, they're not going to be into the playoffs until the last game if they do get in. I think it's going to go down to that last weekend. And they're going to be in there with 3 or 4 other teams. I believe their regulation and overtime win record makes it so they have to be in the top 3. They can't be a wild card team. I don't think the tiebreakers will allow them. So they've got to get in that top 3 spots in the Metro Division. So they've got to make sure that when they are playing the few remaining games they have in the Metro, they've got to make sure that they win these games outright, and they can't let them go to shootouts otherwise.
Yeah, that was the double whammy on Sunday. Not only did they lose that critical point and allow the Flyers to pick up 1 additional point, but that regulation win would have been critical in them trying to climb up and at least get some of those tiebreakers even or to their side. So as we look at the Metropolitan Division right now, Columbus has won 2 big games in a row to vault past the Washington Capitals and get into that final playoff spot. Last night, your Dallas Stars didn't do anybody any good by letting Columbus walk all over them. But the Blue Jackets have been an interesting team all year, and that's why that Marion Gaborik trade intrigues me, because let's be honest, they've played much of the year without Gaborik, and they've done pretty well, much in the same way that Tampa Bay has done an amazing job without Steven Stamkos. And on the very day Steven Stamkos says, I'm coming back, I'm ready to play, out goes the captain. So 2 teams that had big-name players and Gaborik and Stamkos out really didn't see the effects of that. And so to trade a guy like Marion Gaborik may not have any effect on Columbus. And if they get enough back, could really be the thing that puts them over the top.
Well, Tampa Bay, one of the things when they got rid of their old coach, Guy Boucher, and they brought in John Cooper, was about his system. And no matter where he's been, at what level, from junior hockey all the way up through the American Hockey League, and now and there he's won championships at every level, gets to the National Hockey League. It took him a while to get the system going, but it's about everyone committing to the system. They're tough on pucks. They're hard on pucks. Marty St. Louis, a great player, but who would you rather have in your lineup, Steve Stamkos or Marty St. Louis? Ryan Callahan now resembles more of a John Cooper type of player. Not going to diminish what St. Louis is or does, but you have Stamkos, you have Callahan. They're still in the hunt. They're going to be fighting, battling all season long. I don't expect a drastic drop-off in the way that they play. So I certainly look for them to get out there and continue their winning ways.
Yeah. We're still waiting to hear if there were any final moves by the Washington Capitals. Everything has got to go through the National Hockey League office. That's why even though the trade deadline has passed at 3 p.m., things have to get okayed, and as we know, it can take some time before the National Hockey League can check out all the parameters and all the details. We understand the Rangers have made another depth addition to their blue line. Rafael Diaz, who had been recently traded from the Montreal Canadiens to the Vancouver Canucks, has now been traded back to the East Coast to the New York Rangers in exchange for a 5th-round draft choice from Vancouver. As Alan mentioned earlier, Andre Meszaros picked up by the Boston Bruins from the Philadelphia Flyers. Interesting, it was a 3rd-round draft choice for a guy like Meszaros, where we've been seeing 4th and 5th-round picks for other defensemen. Interesting that the Bruins must not have been able to get, with Chris Phillips being re-signed by the Ottawa Senators, couldn't get the guy they wanted. They needed help without Dennis Seidenberg.
Well, this has been amazing, all the activity the last couple of days, and really the start of Friday night with Ryan Miller and Steve Ott going to Buffalo, or to St. Louis for Yaroslav Halak and Chris Stewart, and you look at that started, then the Caps get it started yesterday. There's an amount of moves forcing players to sign contracts. Ryan Callahan doesn't agree to a contract. All types of moves right now, and a lot of things that you saw last year. Everyone's talking about this player went for a couple of second rounders. Mm-hmm. Just because it happened last year doesn't mean it's happening this year. The Edmonton Oilers, everyone is saying they were waiting on second-round draft picks for Ales Hemsky, and it ended up being a 3rd and a 5th, and they had to give some money. They had to pay some of Hemsky's remaining salary for the rest of the season. So you look at all the different deals going around. Some teams have been stockpiled with draft picks. I can't imagine how many draft picks Buffalo has now, just in the first 4 rounds. It's absolutely amazing, and this may be the all-time most at any draft picks that any team's accumulated since they've gone to 7 rounds. Trading Matt Molson, Cody McCormick. Cody McCormick, a pretty tough kid, energetic player. Matt Molson, a goal scorer that everyone expected to move. And then getting a guy like Torrey Mitchell from the San Jose is another player with speed that works the game hard. Buffalo's going to be a drastically different team in the next little while.
It intrigues me also, too, that Molson ends up, you said, in Minnesota, because
we're seeing Dave Legwand right now, so to Detroit. So actually, Detroit
so
has made a deal, and with the Datsuk blow, the injury there, Zetterberg out for a while, they needed to add some veteran leadership in the center role, and he's got to be happy. Nashville's had a very stifling offensive system for years, and to get to go to a team like Detroit will be a huge lift for David Legwand.
So the Red Wings do make an impact trade, and David Legwand, who had been the very first Nashville Predator ever drafted and had been literally the face of that franchise, now goes pretty much back home, because if I'm not mistaken, he played with the Plymouth Whalers, so he is a kind of a local guy in that Detroit area, so it's got to be a great delight for David Legwand. But the Detroit Red Wings, another team the Caps are chasing to try and finalize a playoff spot, finally comes through and makes a pretty important move by picking up David Legwand. We still don't know what they gave up. So, as we said, even though the trade deadline has passed, there still are plenty of moves, and we're probably going to find out a lot more as Alan May, Mr. Social Media, by the way, at May Hockey CSN. You can join your growing legion of Twitter followers. How many do you have right now?
Not that many, to tell you the truth. That could be a lot more.
Could be. It should be a lot more. So follow the always entertaining Alan May. So with Matt Molson, Minnesota, it intrigues me now, too, because it seemed like there was going to be a battle on the West Coast, and it looked like Anaheim was clearing out all kinds of cap space yesterday to maybe make a preemptive strike to take either Vanek or Molson away from their arch rivals, the LA Kings. We haven't heard anything from the Anaheim Ducks.
No, not at all. And that's a lot of speculation, too, is what everyone was talking about there. They've got a big team. They're in first place. They don't want to drastically change the makeup of their team. When you watch them play, you can't believe how large their defensemen are. They've got a humongous group of forwards. Getzlaf and Perry are monsters. They put up huge numbers. So you don't really want to take a lot of what you had. Matthew Perreault's been a good fit there with Teemu Selanne. Teemu Selanne just continues to play very well. They have a lot of what they need. They're stockpiled with a lot of goal scorers and good all-around players in the American Hockey League as well. So it's a touch and go situation there. Do you want to change that much when you're already leading the league? And one of the reports we're getting is Thomas Vanek is going to Montreal right now. And
Thomas Vanek to Montreal, is that what you're hearing?
Yeah, Thomas Vanek to Montreal, and that's kind of a surprise because that came out of the blue because everyone was saying that he was probably going to go to a team like Vancouver and certainly Minnesota.
Or L.A. I mean, L.A. was in on Molson. L.A. was in on Vanek. Those were the two marquee forwards. I don't want to say they necessarily settled for Marian Gaborik, but it certainly seems that way, and it'll be intriguing. We knew Garth Snow, the New York Islander general manager, was under the gun. He gave up a ton for Thomas Vanek. Not only did he give up Matt Molson, he gave up a first-round draft choice as well, including an additional draft choice, so you knew he was going to have to get something big in return, and it'll be interesting to see what Montreal ended up giving the New York Islanders to get Thomas Vanek in that deal. So the Montreal Canadiens load up, which then, of course, really puts the pressure on the Toronto Maple Leafs, because those two are great arch rivals. They're battling right now, and we haven't really heard anything that the Maple Leafs has done. The other thing that's been amazing to me is with Brian Burke as the general manager and a team going nowhere, we expected a mass fire sale of Calgary Flames. Have you seen a single Calgary Flame move?
I was told Mike Camilleri is not going anywhere, and really Calgary hasn't done anything as of yet. One of the things we are seeing right now is that the Caps have called up Ryan Stoa to fill in on the fourth line tonight from the Hershey Bears. And we still have 15, 20 minutes before all these trade calls go through, before all the trades are signed off in the National Hockey League. And that'll be huge. But there's a lot of rumors, especially that come out of Canada through social media, that teams are going to load all their players. Dennis Weidman's name was in a ton of rumors the past couple weeks. Mike Camilleri, everyone was saying he was going all types of places. But at the same time, you can't just give them up for low draft picks if you're going, and then some teams really have their players overvalued at being high first-round draft picks, and there's no way, in my opinion, that some of these guys are worth that at this point in their career.
But Alan, it's Brian Burke. Brian Burke never sits out a trade deadline on either side. Either's making moves to add to his team or he's blowing teams up. That's what surprises me, that a guy like Brian Burke would say absolutely nothing. We talked about Dustin Penner, the newest member of the Washington Capitals, a little earlier. We told you that he is a bit of a character. Well, here is a picture that Dustin Penner took of himself on the plane on his way to Philadelphia, where he is going to meet the Washington Capitals. I wonder if he's going to have to change his Twitter handle now, because as you see, his uniform number as a Washington Capital with his jersey hanging in his locker at Wells Fargo Center waiting for him is 17. So is he going to become Dustin Penner 17 or keep the 25? And by the way, as you heard, we told you earlier, Dustin Penner tweeted out last night that to President Obama, could I please stay with you, because I'm going to need a place to stay when I'm in the nation's capital. So immediately up on whitehouse.gov, boom, there is a petition that you can sign to see if you can get the newest member of the Washington Capitals to have President Obama and Michelle Obama and Sasha and Malia as their newest house guests, right? I think the Lincoln bedroom would look very good. There's a place to hang out for Dustin Penner, right?
Well, the president hasn't been at the Caps house yet to watch a game, so I doubt that's going to happen, that he's going to go to their house unless he wins the Stanley Cup here.
Well, maybe this is the way to break the ice, right?
Yeah.
Now that you got a player living
and
with
he's been there already.
And I bet you could slip him a couple good tickets, right?
Absolutely.
It would work out, right? Well, as we told you also, too, the Washington Capitals, as you saw, getting ready to take on the Philadelphia Flyers tonight in Philadelphia. Let's hear from our main men, John Walton and Mike Vogel, as they give you a little preview of what to expect tonight and where the newest members of these Washington Capitals will fit in.
Hello, everybody, from the Wells Fargo Center in South Philadelphia. Alongside Mike Vogel, I'm John Walton, and this is Two-Man Advantage presented by United Association. The stretch run for the Washington Capitals on this 5th of March brings us to Broad and Patterson Streets as the Caps taking on the Philadelphia Flyers tonight. This is the 5th and final meeting of the year between the two clubs. And, Vogues, different look for both teams. Let's talk about Washington first, acquiring a day before the deadline Dustin Penner yesterday from the Anaheim Ducks. Caps acquiring a top 6 forward.
Big, beefy guy, a guy who's found his scoring touch with Anaheim this year after a couple of fallow seasons with the Los Angeles Kings. Kings not as much of an offensively oriented team as Anaheim or as Edmonton when Penner was there. He's a guy who scored 20 or more goals in 5 of 6 seasons before he went to Los Angeles, so he definitely has the ability to put the puck in the net, and he should occupy a spot in the top 6 for Washington on the left side. Indeed, that's where he's skating at the morning skate today.
And with Marcus Johansson and Troy Brouwer on that line, Brooks Likely looks to be good to go as well. Now for the Philadelphia Flyers, folks, they made a move yesterday too, acquiring defenseman Andrew McDonald from the New York Islanders, reunited with former teammate Mark Streit as he comes in, so they get a little bit stronger on defense, a little bit of a change from what we saw on Sunday.
McDonald, a durable guy, blocks a lot of shots, can play on the PK, and has averaged 25 minutes, 25 seconds a night with the Islanders this season. That's 8th among all NHL defensemen in workload, and for the Flyers, the price was right. Low cap hit. He's on the last year of a 4-year deal that pays him around $600,000, so it's nickels for the Flyers to assume the rest of the way. It's a pretty good pickup for them.
Everybody's talking trade deadline, but there's a big game here tonight, too. The Capitals and the Flyers, as mentioned, meeting for the final time. And how big is this game? Well, you've got 5 teams within 2 points from 6th place down to 10th. The Capitals in 10th right now after a Columbus Blue Jackets win last night. But a win today, get a little bit of help from the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're playing the Rangers tonight. The landscape could look largely different, but you got to win this game and do it in regulation.
It's a huge game for the Capitals, John, and especially in the wake of Sunday's disastrous loss to the Flyers. That was a 3-point swing. The Caps were minutes away from pulling 2 points and the Flyers getting none with a regulation win, what would have been a regulation win for Washington. Instead, the Flyers gain a point on the Caps. That's a 3-point swing there. I think the Caps need this one, and they need it in regulation tonight.
Of course, the game in Boston tomorrow, a pretty tough 2-2. It's time for Between the Pipes, brought to you by United Association. Philadelphia Flyers really only have one true alternative right now with Ray Emery on the shelf, and that is Steve Mason, who got the win in Washington on Sunday. The backup goaltender tonight will be Cal Keeter. He's on emergency recall up from AHL Adirondack. Mason looking for his 26th win of the year. He's 8th in the NHL in that department, coming off a victory against Washington, looking for his 6th career win against the Capitals.
Washington came out of the 3-week Olympic break with 3 games in 4 nights, and Braden Holtby started all 3 of those. Tonight they start a stretch in which they play 5 times in 7 nights, 2 sets of back-to-backs, so we expect to see a couple different goaltenders. Could be Holtby going for win number 20. He's 3-2-3 lifetime against Philadelphia. One thing's for sure, we will see a couple of different goaltenders for Washington over the week ahead.
The start time tonight, noted here, 8 o'clock on the NBC Sports Network. That is your television outlet this evening. The only local call of the game on 106.7 The Fan and the Capitals Radio Network. We hit the airwaves at 7:45. Enjoy the game, everybody.
All right, we thank John Walton and Mike Vogel. 2-man advantage, as I told you tonight, an 8 o'clock start, NBC Sportsnet. And, of course, you can hear John on the radio at 106.7 The Fan. All right, you've got a few more updates on some of these trades we've been talking about, Alan?
Well, yeah, the one right now that just happened, Thomas Vanek to the Montreal Canadiens, supposedly for a 2nd-round draft pick and a prospect. I'm not sure who the prospect is yet, but once all these trade calls go through, and it takes a lot of time because these last-minute deals, you have to get all the parties involved. I'm not sure if the players, what can ask George, if the players have to sign off on these as well.
You know, it's interesting that you've got a situation with Montreal giving up, if it's only a second, I don't care who the prospect is, that's not a return on investment. When what they gave up to get Thomas Vanek, they gave up, as we said, Matt Molson at a 1st round, if I'm not mistaken, a 2nd round as well. To only get that 2nd round back, Gar Snow may be run out of Long Island.
Yeah, and it all depends who the prospect is as well. But I'm not sure of any Montreal Canadiens prospects right now that everyone's clamoring about or talking about, speaking of. So it'll be very interesting to see what those turn out to be. But you're absolutely 100% correct in the Thomas Vanek not getting enough back for him. And certainly everyone expected there to be 1st-round draft picks involved with the Vanek trade. And it's surprising that it did happen the way that it did. And you would have thought that the Minnesota Wild could have give up a 2nd-round draft pick if they had any left at this point for a guy like that. But then again, you've got to get all your players under the salary cap. So, you know, the management calculators are very important that, they know where they're at salary cap-wise, so they don't have to waive players and try to bury 3 or 4 contracts in the American Hockey League. And that wouldn't be enough with a big salary like he has right now.
Also interesting, we just haven't, and again, there still may be other trades trickling through. Last year, I remember it took well past 4 o'clock before kind of everything was finally settled. But there were so many different depth defensemen from the Buffalo Sabres. We heard about Christian Ehrhoff. We heard about Henrik Tallinder. It sounded like Buffalo Sabres were going to have maybe 5 players left by the end of today. Yes, they made the move with Molson and Cody McCormick, and obviously Steve Ott and Ryan Miller. But Ehrhoff, Tallinder, if those guys didn't get moved, Doesn't that surprise you?
Well, not really. Talinder I could see because he's at the end of his contract. But Edler and Ehrhoff, those two names that you mentioned, they have long-term deals with a lot of money left on them. What you do with players like that is you wait for them to get bought out to make sure that you get them at the price you want, that they're not under too long of a term. So if they get bought out this summer, Buffalo has some decisions with buyouts. Vancouver has some decisions with buyouts. I'm not sure where they are or how many they have left. But it's important that you're not stuck with those contracts. And teams have to be very wary of the salary cap, not just this season, but in the future, and the players that you can go after during the offseason. So in my opinion, those are very tough contracts to acquire because there's so much length and so much cash still left on the table. Kind of like we were all surprised with the Roberto Luongo contract yesterday. The trade still has a lot of years left, a lot of money, and Vancouver's taking a little bit of it, but really not enough for me to go and change if you're a contending team to go after a guy like that.
Still trying to figure that deal out. I have no idea what kind of, to be honest with you, both sides were thinking. The Florida Panthers are quite a long ways away from being any kind of contender, in my opinion, to get a veteran like that, even though he wanted to go back there, even though he's very popular in South Florida. I don't know how much that's going to mean in the overall success of the franchise. And then if you're Mike Gillis, who's been getting absolutely hammered in Vancouver, the Canucks general manager, in the span of less than a year, you've taken a 1-2 punch of Roberto Luongo and Corey Schneider and have basically turned it into a draft pick, which was Bo Horvat, who may be a nice player one day, the 9th selection overall last year, played for Dale Hunter and the London Knights, and a couple of prospects in Jakob Markstrom and, well, I guess Sean Mathias isn't any more of a prospect, but is that a good enough return on those two goaltenders?
Well, it's shocking. You look at last year where you thought they would have been with these guys, but once again, the Roberto Luongo contract from the day it was signed, when they made him the captain as well, you know, things have kind of been downhill for him. His professionalism has never faltered in the way that he's played the game. But once they signed that contract the way they did, it diminished his value. Trading Corey Schneider last year at the draft was a shock to everybody, and only time will tell. But all of a sudden, the Vancouver Canucks, they're not fun to watch as they were in the past when Vigneault was the coach. The Sedins are all banged up. Kessler has been hobbled, you know, some Olympic injuries, but at the same time, all of the rumors that come out of Vancouver, and typically all the Canadian cities, got to be very unsettling to the players, and the amount of rumors and innuendo that goes on. It's got to be a tough place to play, and then you add John Tortorella to the mix and his engaging personality. You really got to wonder in Vancouver how long this is all going to last, and they've got a dearth of players with no trade clauses in their contracts and limited trade contracts. So really the players control every one of those situations as to where and if and when they'll be traded.
It is intriguing out there, and we mentioned the New Jersey Devils because of the Corey Schneider trade. There were rumors that Martin Brodeur, after last night's game in which he beat the Detroit Red Wings in front of a sellout crowd, many anticipating that they could be watching Martin Brodeur in a New Jersey Devil uniform for the very last time. And there was a rumor, a very strong rumor today, that Martin Brodeur had gone to Lou Lamoriello and had requested a trade. But if you're Lou Lamoriello, do you A, make that deal, and B, what do you get in exchange for a guy who could go down possibly as the greatest goaltender in the history of hockey, but who is now serving as a backup? Could you get what you think is market value, and what would be the value for a team looking at a guy like Martin Brodeur?
Well, first of all, I don't trade him. Even if Martin Brodeur didn't want to play there the rest of the year, I play the season out with him. There's no way I'll let that happen where he goes somewhere. And Martin Brodeur, if he wanted to go to a contending team, they all have excellent goaltenders. Where is he going to go? He's not going to the New York Rangers. They've got Henrik Lundqvist. He's not going to the St. Louis Blues. They have Ryan Miller. You know, L.A. has Jonathan Quick. The Anaheim Ducks have excellent goaltending. San Jose's got excellent goaltending. So really,
he'd be a backup anywhere. In other words.
Yeah, and so he doesn't want to admit it. Players have to go kicking and screaming into retirement. No, not many players just quit the game and leave. But at the same time, it's just not right for him to be traded and to force a trade, in my opinion, at this point in his career. To me, it's a very tough situation. He's not happy. He doesn't want to be a backup, but he's had a phenomenal career. He's in his 40s. Really, there's not a whole lot you would give up to get him at this point in time. And, his numbers, New Jersey still is about the system they play, regardless of who the coaching staff is there. They're always played the same system since about 1995, maybe a little bit different change on the neutral zone trap and how they play on the back check now. Small changes, but the New Jersey Devils still play that same boring type of hockey.
That's Alan May. I'm Al Kochen. This is a special edition of the Capitals Report, our trade deadline edition here on the Monumental Network. We'll be with you through George McPhee's press conference, which is scheduled for 4 o'clock right here at the Kettler Iceplex. But we also hope to have George McPhee join us on set before that and get the thoughts of the Capitals Vice President and General Manager. If you're just kind of catching up with us, there has been a lot that's gone on. The Capitals, of course, kicked everything off, and all the moves that we know of by the Washington Capitals took place yesterday with the acquisition of Dustin Penner, left winger from the Ducks of Anaheim, in exchange for a 4th-round draft choice that was acquired by the Capitals from Anaheim in exchange for Matthew Perreault at the start of the season. And then following that, after the Penner deal, the Capitals grant the trade request of Martin Erat. They send him to the Phoenix Coyotes along with John Mitchell, ironically acquired also in that Matthew Perreault deal from the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim, in exchange for Rostislav Kessler, a former All-Star when he was healthy for the Columbus Blue Jackets, a prospect Chris Brown, and a 4th-round draft choice. And Alan May, you have some breaking news.
Well, it's actually being reported by my cousin right now. He's saying that Yaroslav Halak has been traded to the Washington Capitals. And I'm not sure if this is true. I'm still waiting. You know what? We've seen Elliot Friedman right now from the Hockey Night in Canada is saying that Yaroslav Halak is on his way here. And we'll just have to wait and see.
So
I'm a little bit speechless right now, and this one.
See, you didn't.
Bob
think,
official
McKenzie.
Bob McKenzie. It's the official Bob McKenzie. He said it. I'm going to buy it.
All right.
This is going to be very, very, very interesting in the next little bit.
So there you hear it right here, first on the Monumental Network, as Yaroslav Halak now is being reported as a member of the Washington Capitals. We don't know what the Capitals gave up in exchange. I had mentioned to you earlier in the day that 4th-round draft choice that the Capitals picked up seems to have been an interesting commodity for goaltenders already. And remember back in, I guess it was 2008, 2009, right? The Cristobal Huet deal that propelled the Washington Capitals to a playoff spot. In addition to that, they acquired Sergei Fedorov. In addition to that, they acquired Matthew Cook. And that seemed to propel the Washington Capitals, a team that was out of the playoff mix under the first year of Bruce Boudreau, into a great run and some very exciting times in the postseason. So if Yaroslav Halak is here, maybe George McPhee is thinking exactly what happened in that trade past when Cristobal Huet was acquired by this team, to see if that move can trigger this franchise, because Huet came in and basically went unbeaten down the stretch as the Capitals passed a lot of teams and won the Southeast Division, eking out the Carolina Hurricanes in the final days of the regular season, got into the postseason, and Cristobal Huet was a key factor of that. Could Yaroslav Halak then end up being exactly that same impetus for the Washington Capitals down the stretch?
I'm not sure what that last word means, but Yaroslav Halak, get back to Cristobal Huet. I thought it was a huge mistake when he left the Washington Capitals to sign with the Chicago Blackhawks. It sounds like a minimal amount of money, but it's still a lot in the scheme of things. I heard it was up for $500,000 a season, money that I wish I was getting paid per season right now. But you look at that, and it never worked out for him with Chicago. And I really think when you find a fit for a player on a team, he should stay there. For career-wise, he should have stayed with the Washington Capitals. It was working out very well, and it was something that he's going to look back in years and regret, because he ended up riding the buses down in Rockford, Illinois, in the American Hockey League, up and down. Was always a backup guy there. Very surprising. Now, if the Halak thing is true, and I am buying it, it's interesting. But one of the things that when a team does look at their goaltending, I'm talking from a guy that's actually on the roster. You have to believe in your goaltenders. We've seen so much good play out of Braden Holtby in past seasons prior to this year. I thought he was coming on very well of late, getting back to playing his same aggressive style. Halak played well against the Capitals in the playoffs. I also thought the Caps were out-coached in that playoff round. But Yaroslav Halak has played very well in St. Louis this season. And if this is true, it's going to be
It's being announced now as an active trade that the compensation to Buffalo to be determined. But as we said, most of these goalies who have been dealt recently over the last couple of days, that 4th round, 3rd round, 5th round pick has kind of been the barometer there. So it'll be interesting to see if the Capitals had to give up anything more than that. Possibly the pick they acquired yesterday from the Phoenix Coyotes was enough to get it done in the 4th round, and we will find out when we hear from George McPhee. By the way, we are understanding also, too, that player that was to be named in the Thomas Vanek deal is Sebastian Kohlberg, who was a relatively high prospect, former #1 draft choice by the Montreal Canadiens, so they give him up along with a 2nd-round pick to pick up Thomas Vanek. But, Alan, let's touch upon the Halak deal because, again, it is interesting and ironic in many regards that one of the Capital disappointments that still stings for many of us who follow this team and cover this team was that series the Capitals had with the Montreal Canadiens. And if I'm not mistaken, in that game, I think it was Game 5 in that series where Yaroslav Halak up in Montreal with, I want to say it was either 56 or 58 saves. It was the most amount of saves turned in by a winning goaltender in regulation in the history of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean, it gives you an idea just sometimes how snake-bitten it seems like this Capital franchise is, that you can be on the wrong side of an incredible record as long and as many games has been in the history of the Stanley Cup playoffs to be on the wrong side of that part of history. But that is exactly the type of goaltender that the Capitals feel that still is available to them. And they made the move at the trading deadline to pick up a guy, Yaroslav Halak, who at least provides some veteran presence for what is admittedly a very talented but very inexperienced, all things considered, goaltending tandem or trio, if you want to include Philip Grubauer, in the mix with Michael Neuvirth and, of course, with Braden Holtby.
Well, one of the things, sorry, I'm paying kind of...
I want you to look at the
But one of the things we're seeing here right now is that possibly it's Michael Neuvirth going to Buffalo, but that still leaves the situation here of the salary is $3.75 million prorated for the rest of the season for Halak. I think Michael Neuvirth was somewhere in the 2.35. Yeah. I'm not sure, just going by my bad memory. And that still throws a Evgeny Kuznetsov contract in the mix as things that have to happen. So there's a possibility that Buffalo would be holding on to salary at this point.
That's interesting. Now, if the Capitals did indeed give up Michael Neuvirth, that is a significant asset to move for a veteran, Yaroslav Halak, who, if I'm not mistaken, is an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. It obviously says something about what the Capitals feel about Philip Grubauer, and there's no question that he has become now the leading goaltending prospect in their entire organization. That was without question, because there really, to be honest, wasn't a lot behind him. But in the eyes of many, he did pass Michael Neuvirth in terms of who they would rather have sitting behind Braden Holtby. So if Michael Neuvirth has been moved for salary cap reasons and for overall depth reasons, it's interesting to see that they bring in a guy like Halak, and will be more intriguing to see how this shakes itself out down the stretch. Does he now become what is interesting too? Remember when Cristobal Huet was brought in, the goalie that he basically replaced is the current goaltender coach, Olaf Kolzig. And that didn't set well with Olaf Kolzig. How will this be handled now with Olaf Kolzig's pupil, Braden Holtby, if Yaroslav Halak is brought in and we see him start against the Boston Bruins tomorrow night as opposed to Holtby starting tonight, and then Halak steps in? Does he get on a Cristobal Huet run and suddenly make all other goaltenders obsolete in the Capitals organization?
Well, one of the things that you have to think about with this trade happening is Adam Oates just a few weeks ago said, win and you're in. And so there's a lot of pressure on all the goaltenders now. You have to be your best. You've got to get the wins. I don't care what your save percentage is. I don't care what your goals against average is. You've got to win games. You've got to be the guy that makes the game-winning save. And this is going to put a lot more competition. It's not just a bunch of young guys looking around the room at each other. You look at Holtby, Neuvert, and Grubauer, all pretty much the same age. Now you've got 28-year-old Yaroslav Halak coming in here, has an excellent career, has played well in Verizon Center, mind you, and he's got some huge wins here. He's got a Game 7 win under his belt. That's very important if you want to throw a little dagger out there. This is a huge moment right now in the Washington Capitals. George McPhee has addressed spots. We have all felt somewhat in the defense. We're going to see where the Kessler thing goes. He's got to be healthy. He's had some concussion issues in the past. You've got a prospect in Chris Brown. You've got a huge hulking left winger in Dustin Penner who can make your top players better, make your penalty kill better, and he's going to be good on the wall. So a lot of needs have been addressed by the Capitals today. A lot of people out there, I still didn't think a goaltending trade was going to happen. I felt it had to do more with the defense. So now the pressure is really on the defensemen of this team to play a lot better, to bring a better game, because you do have a proven goaltender coming into the team right now.
If you're just joining us here on this special edition of the Capitals Report, the trade deadline edition here on the Monumental Network, Al Koken and Alan May with you. We were just reporting that Yaroslav Halak has been acquired by the Washington Capitals. The early understanding is it's in a trade for Capital goaltender Michael Neuvert. Was there more involved in this with the Buffalo Sabres? We're still waiting to get all the details of this, but it is very interesting that the Washington Capitals have addressed what George McPhee has sometimes been publicly talking about, that he feels his goaltending has not been up to snuff this year. He was quoted recently on an NHL broadcast by the NBC Sports Network, and Joe Micheletti saying that he had heard from George McPhee earlier that day, where George McPhee said the Capitals would be 10 points better if they had gotten the goaltending they expected. So George McPhee, obviously still feeling that, addresses that, bringing in a very savvy veteran, a guy who did the Capitals in 3 years ago in the playoffs when he was a member of the Montreal Canadiens. Yaroslav Halak coming from the Buffalo Sabres after the Sabres acquired him in the Ryan Miller trade. So the Capitals have been very, very busy during this 48 hours with the acquisition of Dustin Penner, the trading of Martin Erat to open up cap space, to bring in Rusty Klesla and a key prospect in Chris Brown, as well as a fourth-round draft choice, and now picking up Yaroslav Halak from the Buffalo Sabres to 10 goal in exchange for what we are understanding, we have no official word yet, but we are understanding, is current Capital goaltender Michael Neuvert. So the wheels continue to spin, Alan May.
No, it's absolutely amazing, and you still have to think that there's a salary dump somewhere in here. I don't want to get any rumors, but the Caps did trade for Klesla yesterday. He's got a $2 million hit, and if you want to get Kuznetsov, that could be a name. I'm just throwing this out there. That this actually a bizarre set of circumstances to be the last trade of the day announced right now, the last major deal. You look at a lot of people around the National Hockey League have been pointing fingers at the Capitals goaltenders, and as I said just a few moments ago, it's huge on the Caps defense now that they have to play a lot better. Granted, you are getting Jack Hillen back in the lineup, who played very well last year, a veteran presence. You've got John Erskine slowly getting back to 100% health. Mike Green is healthy, needs to be a lot better. John Carlson, Carl Alsner needs to be a lot better. Now the pressure, I think the main focus on this team is going to be on the defense. That unit has to play better. They've got to be tougher to play against. You've got a goaltending competition once again, but this time it's not just a bunch of young guys. You throw a veteran goaltender in the mix, a guy who's had some playoff success, who stole a lot of playoff games, but that being said, so is Braden Holtby. But the big thing here is this guy's won Game 7 a couple times in his career.
And it'll be interesting to see again how this all plays out in the locker room as new members come to the Washington Capitals. The guy who will make his Capital debut tonight is the guy the Capitals acquired yesterday from the Ducks of Anaheim, Dustin Penner. And a few moments ago, we were able to hear Dustin Penner and get his reaction on the trade to the Washington Capitals.
Well, I always think we could have gone worse, so that's positive. But it's always interesting whether you sign an offer sheet and go somewhere, or get traded in the middle of the season. There's a breaking in period where, personally I give myself a little bit of time to not make such or errors during practice, getting used to new drills, and the guys are really good at helping making me feel at ease.
Did you know any of these guys in here? Is there any
Yeah, I'd met.
relationships?
I'd met.
Like said, you guys hung out in Vegas a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah, we had a nice spa day there, and then Fairzy I grew up with and played with.
The Winkler
Yeah.
connection.
Been through this before, being traded at the deadline. Is there anything you can draw on from that prior experience?
Yeah, I think the Kings were in a similar situation as far as standings. It's coming from a different type of team. Edmonton was out of it, whereas Anaheim was in it. That maybe bodes a lot better for me, having been on a good team. I think when you come from a team that's dead last, you maybe get into some bad habits, and there's a reason why some teams are in last place, and it's a mentality sometimes. So I'm coming from a good place mentally. Being on a team that was number one for how many months, and getting confidence that way. So I think the difference is I have my confidence coming here as opposed to in Edmonton, where it would have been lacking a bit.
Well, it seems like playing for Anaheim this year rejuvenated you offensively, and I got to think the system that the Ducks played versus the way the Kings like to play had a little something to do with that as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think I obviously had chemistry with Getz and Paris, from my early days in the league. And then when I got back, they're two big guys with really good hands and can see the ice. So, I'm able to fit in there at in some way. Obviously they're Olympic medalists, but I was able to read off them well just because of the way they play.
Bruce Boudreau knows this team pretty well. Did you have a chance to talk to him at all?
No, I saw a couple of trainers. I stepped onto the ice at 10:30 in the morning yesterday. 10:31, the trainer tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Bob wants to talk to you." And I was like, "That's interesting." All right, and then I walked back in, and he's like, "Traded you." I'm like, "Okay, thanks for the opportunity." Walked out, had 3 hours to get to LAX, so I had to drive half an hour to Newport, pack up. Parents drove me to the airport at LAX, got there at 1:15 through security, and then talking to some of the media at 1:35 after I went through security.
What's that like? What goes through your mind and your heart when you hear that news and all of a sudden you've got to switch gears mentally?
I don't think it's as tough on me as it is the people who are close to me. I think my parents had just flown in, so I think they were more the deer in headlights thing than I was. It happened to me before, and they got to see it firsthand. So, for me, it's a gradual getting used to. You get here. I remember this feeling when I was going to LA from Edmonton, and you're in a playoff push, and there's a lot of excitement and a lot of stress as well. So you try to come in and fit in as best you can, and it's not going to happen on day one, but hopefully and gradually it happens quicker than it should in the way they want it to.
You have to make that in a couple of weeks to be able to stop by and grab some stuff.
Well, I'm going to go see my dogs in a couple weeks.
Who's got them now?
My parents.
Oh, they got more than they bargained for.
Oh yeah, they were in the middle guest room, so they moved to the penthouse suite, which is my room, and now they're probably inviting people over for the vacant room.
Are the dogs allowed in the bed with them?
Well, they were allowed with me. I don't know if they have that responsibility.
What kind of dogs?
A 100-pound French or German Shepherd canine, and then a 150-pound French Mastiff.
It's a big bed.
It is Cal King.
Have you any idea who you're going to be playing with tonight?
I think Brouwer and Marcus. So.
Do you know anything? I mean, just from watching you play on tape, any idea, or just being out there today? Think
Well,
you fit with them?
I think Mark's a Swede,
Yeah.
right? Okay, good. 1 for 1. So obviously, I think he's our centerman. He's pretty good with the puck. I'm sure he can make a lot of real nice passes like most Swedes can. Good on his edges. And then Brouwer's more of probably my type of player, like similar to me. Get straight ahead, work the pucks in corners. Hopefully we'll work nice together.
When you have to make the on-ice transition, the system transition, in addition to that, is there a mental shift for you going from a team that is comfortably in the playoffs to making that switch?
Yeah, there is. It's when I was with Anaheim, you approach each game, but it wasn't life or death. And when you're on the fringe of being in or out, there's a pressure that comes with that, and that's a certain mentality that is a lot different than the position I came from mentally in Anaheim.
Is it easy to ramp up to that, or does
Well,
it
I would
take-
hope so. I've been in the league 600 games and played some playoff games. I know the difference, and I'll definitely feel the difference, especially being rivalry night.
Do you have good experiences with Philadelphia? Have you had some pretty good games against them?
Throughout my professional career, yes, there have been some line brawls and whatnot. It's going to be an intense game, and the last time I think I've been in a rivalry type situation, I won't exclude LA Anaheim, but I'm sure it'll be more similar to Calgary, Edmonton here.
A little more hatred.
Yeah,
Looking forward to it?
I am. I still got a job.
Well, there is the newest member of the Washington Capitals, Dustin Penner, although I guess the newest
Not
member
the newest.
technically would be Yaroslav Halak, who we understand has been acquired by the Capitals in exchange for Michael Neuvirth and a 6th-round pick. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's one of the things we're hearing right now.
All right. And we anticipate having George McPhee join us here on set before he meets with the media. His press conference, which had been scheduled at 4, has been pushed back to 4:15. We'll have that live for you as well here on the Monumental Network. But the Washington Capitals, Dustin Penner, Allen, he traded from the team with the best record in hockey to a team that is fighting to get into a playoff spot. And yet everything that Dustin Penner said right there, the attitude he brings, he seems to be, accepting of this deal. I know he was kind of being a little facetious, saying, hey, I still got a job, because he's obviously going to get paid whether at a job or not. But you want a guy who wants to be here, and it sounded like Dustin Penner is not unhappy to be out of Anaheim and happy to be here in Washington.
I love the fact that he's got a great sense of humor and he's bringing a lot of personality. You look at two of the guys that are having an exceptional year this year, and Jason Chimera, Joel Ward, very funny guys, lighten up the room, keep it loose. You look at this, and also the fact that you always love, and I know that general managers and coaches like this when they bring champs into a room, guys that have won Stanley Cup specifically in this case, but Penner has 2 of those. He's played remarkably well in those 2 Stanley Cup runs. You bring a player like that, he's got to want to play. Anaheim's a wonderful situation. He was playing a lot with their two stars and Getzlaf and Perry as he had in the past, and not so much here lately. But he's a player. He's a top-end player. You want to get ice time. You want to get a jersey every single game. They didn't trade for him not to be in the lineup. And to be a player that everyone in the team wants, I think that's you have to take into consideration. Brooks Lake was quoted as saying that Erat was a perimeter player, and Dustin Penner is the guy that goes to the net, goes to the fire, and you have to have players like that. And that's something that we've been questioning all year, is the ability for players to get to the front of the net and want to get to the front of the net. Players that are tougher on the wall, that battle harder. And at 6'4", 247 pounds, there's not many forwards that are top 6, top 9 players in this conference, in the Eastern Conference, that have that size up front and have a scoring ability to match Dustin Penner.
Mm-hmm. And let's say something about Martin Erat. In the locker room with the Washington Capitals and on the ice with the Washington Capitals, he handled himself like a professional. I was in there a lot. There was never anything where you could see visibly that Martin Erat was trying to do anything contrary to his teammates. Remember, he leaves the Washington Capitals 4th in assists on this team right now. So, yeah, the fact that he didn't score goals was a major disappointment, and that is something that's going to haunt Erat, the Capitals, George McPhee, and that whole trade. But the bottom line was Martin Erat did deliver in a number of different ways once he finally got the ice time. Why the disconnect early between coach and player, I do not know. But once Martin Erat started to get the ice time, started to play on the lines that you would assume he'd play on, he did produce points. Did he produce goals? No. And is the fact that Dustin Penner, A, can produce goals, and B, seems to enjoy getting to the front of the net, going to be an upgrade for the Washington Capitals? That seems obvious. But they're not getting rid of necessarily a malcontent, but they did get rid of a guy who requested a trade twice. As a player in the locker room, Alan, even the guy like Martin Erat, who can be professional, when you say, I want out, doesn't that affect the way the team feels about you? And doesn't that maybe change the dimension and complexion of that locker room, bringing a guy in who wants to be here, eliminating a guy who asked to be traded?
Well, the number one thing that, as a general manager and a coach, I'm going to answer this first, is that you don't want distractions on your team. You do not want your players talking about things other than winning hockey games. Now, the conversations with Marty Erat, once it was made public that he wanted to be traded, you have to get that out of here as quick as possible. You don't want players. You see how paralyzing it was in Vancouver with all the Luongo talk. He handled it better than anyone, but it becomes a topic of conversation when you're asking the other players, what about Marty Erat? You look at him, and then as a player in the organization, if he doesn't want to be here and you do, that's a guy that you want out. So there's going to be resentment from the players that aren't getting his ice time, and then the other players don't want to have that conversation. You get tired of it. Just like when players are getting in trouble off the ice, it becomes a huge distraction. So that distraction's gone now. It's important that it is. He handled himself very well. Really at the start of the year, we were wondering, he got off to a bad start last year. First, he was injured right off the bat playing the Florida Panthers, never really got his groove going. And then in the playoffs, he was taken out by Ovechkin in a playoff game with the dislocated elbow. It seemed like it was a bad circumstance for him from the day he got here. And then coming to training camp, not playing on the top lines, getting 5 and 6 minutes to start the season for about the first 6, 7, 8, 9 games. And then he has a breakout game against the Columbus Blue Jackets. You think this guy's going to get going, gets 3 assists that night, and then really doesn't do much after that. And I'm not trying to dump on the player because he's not here, but he's got no one to fault for the one goal. There was a lot of opportunities where, I don't know, I was ready to throw my phone at the wall when he didn't shoot the puck and bear down in front of the net. And that's something that you have to have. You have to be angry when you're not scoring goals. You've got to go out there. You've got to find a way to get those goals. You've got to add more determination to your game to get on the board. He leaves here with 1 goal, an empty netter just before the break. And certainly he needed a fresh start, and the Capitals needed him gone. People will be able to debate this for years depending how Forsberg works out. But once again, he's gone. Dustin Penner is complete opposite type of player that he is. The big thing here, though, Dustin Penner needs to have a good start with the Capitals, and hopefully the coaching staff rewards him and puts him with the right players to maximize the benefits of his size and his scoring ability.
Well, it is also going to be interesting to see now how this locker room handles the addition of Yaroslav Halak. And again, this is not to dump on Michael Neuvirth, but I do know that there were some players who questioned what Michael Neuvirth, how many times he seemed to get hurt.
I've got another addition to this.
Another addition.
So as I was saying just before, Radoslav Kesla is now a Buffalo Sabre. So they were able to do the salary dump as well with Michael Neuvirth. So George McPhee gets rid of the $4.5 million. You're swapping players out for salary cap money, and it looks like Klesla is on his way to the Buffalo Sabres. So it's Neuvirth, Klesla, and to Sabres for Halak and a 3rd-round draft pick in 2015. The Buffalo Sabres have a lot of draft picks, more than any team in the National Hockey League right now, almost more than any 2 teams in the National Hockey League right now. So another good get by George McPhee in the 3rd-rounder as well.
Of 2015, which we understand is the draft that is the deepest. Not only do they have the 2 stars at the top in Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel, but that the entire draft allegedly is deeper than this 2014 draft. So a 3rd-round pick is not an inconsiderable asset in a draft that's supposed to be loaded with talent. Interesting addition. Alan May, of course, will keep up to date. We will anticipate having George McPhee join us on set before he meets with the media as well in this special edition of the Capitals Report here, the trade deadline edition on the Monumental Network. But as I was mentioning about Michael Neuvirth, I know there were some players who were questioning just the overall makeup of Michael Neuvirth. You could see the talent. There was unquestionably some great abilities from Michael Neuvirth, but when you were continually getting hurt, when you were continually getting these mysterious ailments, scheduled to start, come down sick, it could be all legitimate. I'm not saying that Michael Neuvirth was making stuff up, but as hockey players, and we're talking about a completely different set of athletes, as hockey players, these were guys used to playing with broken bones and ailments that were much greater than the flu, stepping on pucks, things like that. Those, I wonder, too, were there doubts about Michael Neuvirth's makeup, and does having Michael Neuvirth now removed from the mix also galvanize this locker room and bringing in a professional who many people in that locker room saw stand on his head and beat them 3 years ago with Montreal?
Well, before there was Holtby, there was Varlamov and Neuvirth, and it used to be that joke that we had that we were wondering, you'd one of these guys to get 2 or 3 starts, and you'd expect him to come walking out the tunnel to be the new number one, and all of a sudden he was down with the flu of some type, or this year the stepping on the puck incident. But so you do have to question that, and I know that we raise the questions ourselves in our private conversations. And so, you turn the page on him. Braden Holtby has always wanted to be the number one. I think the kid would play if he only had one leg. He would get out there and try to battle back. And it's a question. There's another thing. That conversation has been had, so it's another thing that you do want gone from the team. You're bringing in an older player, Yaroslav Halak, 28 years old, not all that old, still a quality goaltender. As I said, the last few years, he's put up enormous numbers in St. Louis, been very solid there, but they thought they needed an upgrade in Ryan Miller, who I still feel is one of the top 3 goalies in the National Hockey League. But Yaroslav Halak is an upgrade over Michael Neuwirth at this point in time, and Michael Neuwirth has to go and reclaim his career in Buffalo and prove that he is a guy that can win hockey games and be a number one in the National Hockey League. Apparently that, and like every player, that's their goal. As a goaltender, you want to be the number one guy. You don't want to be a backup your whole life. Until you're about 50 years old, you be a backup forever. But at the same time, a lot of huge moves by the Caps in the last few days, and as always, nothing ever happens in the rumors when involving the Washington Capitals. It always comes out of left field, and this was certainly out of left field today.
Well, Alan May will be talking with George McPhee right here on set in just about 5 minutes as the Capitals Vice President and General Manager will join Alan here on the Monumental Network. It still remains to be seen if there's one other little boost, one little addition. Remember, this came in close to 4 o'clock, and the trading deadline was at 3 o'clock. We still wonder, can there be something done to shore up the defense? Is the return of Jack Hillen going to be enough in the minds of Capitals General Manager George McPhee? That may be enough. Remember, too, even though there is a trading deadline, waivers still apply. You can still pick up players via waivers, and there could be some other things going on there. But the Capital roster has changed. Alan, may I ask you, from where we were yesterday to where we are right now, is this a dramatic improvement, a subtle improvement? Where do you see the Capitals standing right now?
Well, we're going to bounce around a little bit. You look at the forwards flip-flopping, Erat for Dustin Penner. I think that's a trade. Right now, you look at those 2 players, you want Dustin Penner in your lineup. We've talked about the Washington Capitals needing big players, tougher players on the boards. Penner's a guy that we talked about last year on this set. Is that I felt the Capitals should have went after last year and was hoping that they would. That's an upgrade over Martin Erat. Martin Erat just didn't get it going here, so there's an upgrade right there. On defense, you still have a team that's been banged up quite a bit, used more defensemen maybe than any team in the National Hockey League so far, but they are getting the veteran and Jack Hillen back. You look at the goaltending situation, you got a guy that's a proven commodity in the National Hockey League in Yaroslav Halak. There's an upgrade right there over Michael Neuwirth. Halak is a guy that gets a lot of games in, who has beat a lot of teams in the playoffs, well, namely the Washington Capitals, won a huge Game 7 with the best Capitals team that we've seen in years, that 09-010 version, I believe it was, and that's not to be forgotten. And hopefully he comes here, starts out playing some good hockey for the Caps, gives the team confidence. And as I said earlier in the show, when you look behind you, at any level that you're at in hockey, whether it's youth hockey, junior, collegiate, the minor leagues, the National Hockey League, you want to believe in your goaltenders. I've seen a lot of good hockey out of Braden Holtby. This is really going to put a lot more pressure on him now. Yaroslav Halak, you look back there, he's not going to let in a lot of soft goals, but he does need to come in here and play well right off the bat to gain the confidence of everyone, not only the players, but the coaching staff as well. Put heat on Holtby so he's even better when he does get out there.
It's going to be interesting to see. There's obviously no word on how Mikhail Grabowski is faring, but I think the Capitals feel that with guys like Eric Fair's versatility, Marcus Johansson, who can play center, that if there is going to be a long-term injury to a guy like Grabowski who may be kept out the rest of the regular season, that they still can fare well. And remember, Casey Wellman, since he's been called up and the times we've seen him as a member of the Capitals from being called up from the Hershey Bears, has performed pretty well. I think they feel that they must have enough depth at center ice if Mikhail Grabowski is going to be out for a significant amount of time more.
Well, and don't forget, the one person that you think You look at the Klesla for Erat. Really now it's Chris Brown for Martin Erat. Chris Brown is a player, a second-round draft pick, has had a phenomenal career so far in the U.S. National Development Team program. Made it out of Texas. I've seen him play his entire life. He goes and plays at the University of Michigan. Had 2 of 3 really good seasons there. And last year in the American Hockey League, 29 goals. Led all rookies in the American Hockey League, playing for the Portland Pirates, the affiliate of the Phoenix Coyotes. There's a player, excellent skater, good size, phenomenal condition, plays the game all the way around. Wouldn't be surprised to see him in the not too distant future, and it just be a little while till he gets acclimated to the system. But you look at the Phoenix Coyotes, a very responsible hockey team in the way that they play, the way that they're developing their players in the American Hockey League. I think Chris Brown is a player like Michael Latta. We'll see a little down the road to see how good he can be, and maybe this would be a guy they say they stole.
And one of the other things that has to be mentioned, because it was a source of a lot of irritation from a lot of fans, was that in acquiring Martin Erat last year, the Capitals gave up a significant prospect in Philip Forsberg. George McPhee says he'll never bat 1,000, that you're always going to do something that may be controversial, that may not work out, but he's always going to try something to help his team. And remember, when the Erat trade was made last year, the Capitals knew, it wasn't public knowledge, but the Capitals knew Brooks Laich was not going to be able to play for them. They had nothing on the left side, and George McPhee said at the time and reiterated, I couldn't let this team go into the postseason knowing that I had an opportunity to provide a veteran presence on that left side and help this team. And there's no question it ended up helping the team get to the postseason, and losing Martin Erat early in the playoff series to the New York Rangers is going to be one of those questions that we'll never know the answer to. Could he have made a difference in a series that ultimately went 7 games? A veteran presence, a guy who likes to work in tight spaces, even if he's not an in front of the net guy. We saw him behind the net in the corners, a guy who usually got the puck away from the opposition player. He was that type of player. Those are the type of guys you like to have in the postseason. But right now, all the key assets that people were worried about, Burakovsky, Riley Barber, Madison Bowie, all these young, talented Capital players that I'm sure we're being asked about are still within the Capital organization.
Well, and certainly, and the Forsberg thing, that'll take time to play out. Had a phenomenal World Junior tournament. But you mentioned one of the names out there that not a lot of people in Washington are buzzing about yet. And from the player, the scouts that I talked to outside of the Washington Capitals organization, the guys in Western Canada that work the National Hockey League circuit, are saying this guy is going to be a phenomenal player in the National Hockey League. To my knowledge, he's already grown a few inches. He's bigger than where the Caps drafted him.
We're talking about Madison
Bowie.
Yep.
Yeah, and very good defenseman. Plays rough and tough. Great shot. Moves the puck around very well. 6'2". He's going to come in here at about 215 pounds next fall. And he's going to be a player that the Capitals are like, wow, he's going to also force their hand to make some decisions down the line. He was a great pickup for the Caps. Went in the, what was it, a second round? Second round. And people are going to be one of those guys that are going to be talking about what a great draft pick this was. You talk about Riley Barber. He's been exceptional at the University of Notre Dame. He's been exceptional at the World Junior the last few years, leadership qualities. But he's a guy that'll have to spend a little bit of time in the American Hockey League. He'll have to bulk up. He's an excellent player, but still you have that. And then the Jewel, another guy that was a phenomenal player in the World Junior Championship, been phenomenal in the KHL, Evgeny Kuznetsov. There's a lot of salary cap space to add him to the roster right now, even without throwing someone on long-term IR. So I'd expect, everyone's keeping it tight-lipped right now. We'll hold George to the fire here a little bit and see if we can get an answer on him on Kuznetsov and what his contract will be. But it'll be capped at $900,000 because of the entry-level contract status that he has. He'll eat up a year this year, and then it's debatable whether it'll be 1 or 2 more years after this. And certainly we do want to see this guy play and see how good he can be.
So from yesterday to today, Dustin Penner, potentially Evgeny Kuznetsov, Jack Hillen, and Yaroslav Halak. Those are 4 interesting additions to the roster without any major subtractions. Again, no insult to Martin Erat, who asked to be removed from the roster, and Michael Neuvert, who has been in and out because of injuries. So it is interesting to see 4 for 2, if we include Kuznetsov, is something that is going to be very intriguing how this plays out in these final 20
and
games.
You got to look at, there's another thing. Brooks Laich has skated the last few games that he's played. Has been the best hockey that he's played in the last few years. It's a fluid. He's moved very well. Hopefully he's back to 100% and can get back to having him in the lineup every night, not having to worry after every game whether he's going to be able to play. Certainly this has been very trying on the coaching staff management to have a healthy Brooks Laich back. This team needs him to play physical. He needs to be in front of the net. He needs to play a grittier game. And you have to have his body at 100% to make sure that he's able to play that game, because if he's injured, not able to play his brand of hockey, the brand that's made him successful, the Caps have a problem.
All right, when we continue here on this special edition of the Capitals Report, our trade deadline edition, Capitals Vice President and General Manager George McPhee will be right here joining Alan May to break down all of the activity the last 48 hours from the Washington Capitals. But right now, let's get a preview of tonight's game. It's a big one with the Capitals and Philadelphia Flyers, and for that, we go back to Philadelphia and are joined by John Walton.
Al, greetings from Philadelphia, where, oh, by the way, it's not just the trade deadline today. The Capitals with a big Metropolitan Division matchup taking on the Flyers here at Wells Fargo Center. Both of these teams with a little bit of a different look as this game gets started tonight. This is the fifth and final meeting of the year between the two teams. Both teams have won twice, and both teams have won one time in each other's building. Most recently, the Flyers at Verizon Center, of course, on Sunday. The Capitals trying to shake off a little bit of that heartbreak after blowing a 2-goal lead and watching Vinny Lecavalier win it in overtime. But here in Philadelphia, the Caps, well, they've had some success here too. A 7-0 win, most notably, that back on November the 1st. Joel Ward with a lot of fond memories here. He had his first and only NHL hat trick. Jason Chimera back on November 1st had a career-high 4 points. But some of the aforementioned changes the day before the deadline, the Capitals acquiring Dustin Penner from the Anaheim Ducks for a 4th-round draft pick. He is here. He will wear number 17 and make his Capitals debut here tonight. The Philadelphia Flyers also with a move yesterday. Their move came on defense. Andrew McDonald coming over from the New York Islanders. He'll wear number 47. He's expected to make his orange and black debut tonight as well. This is a big game for both teams. Almost goes without saying with 20 games to go in the regular year. What's going on for Washington? Well, they have 68 points. The Flyers have 70, and they are among 5 teams in the Eastern Conference from 6th place to 10th. And it is certainly a possibility that that could get shaken up tonight, too, because the New York Rangers, they're in action tonight. They're one of those 5 teams. The Capitals with a win in regulation and a win by the Toronto Maple Leafs, they could find themselves moving up 3 standings places tonight. The bad side of that, of course, is if you end up losing in regulation, some bad things can happen. But it's the Caps and the Flyers. Note the game time tonight, 8 o'clock. Note the television side, too. It's on the NBC Sports Network exclusively. That means the only local call of the game tonight on the Capitals Radio Network and on 106.7 A Fan. Guys, back to you.
All right, welcome to the Monumental Network Caps Deadline Special. Right now I'm joined by Washington Capitals General Manager George McPhee to go over what's happened the last couple of days. You've been very busy, and we'll start off first with the deal that happened yesterday in acquiring Dustin Penner from the Anaheim Ducks.
Well, I was really happy to get some things done a day before the deadline. It doesn't usually happen that way. It usually comes down to the last day, but I called Anaheim late in the day and 2 days ago, and he was someone that was available, and I thought it was a really good fit for our team. It's a big guy, not unlike a Mike Knuble, goes to the net, and I thought we needed another guy like that. And he can play with our skill guys and go to the net. So I was really happy with that trade. It was a fair trade, and it was a good business deal for Anaheim and the Capitals.
And you eventually gave your 4th rounder that you picked up for Anaheim a year ago back to them for in the Matthew Perreault trade.
Well, it's interesting how that worked, because I sort of helped them out in October and they've helped me out in March, and that's the way we should be always doing our deals, but can't say that's always the case.
And then late yesterday, you were finally able to move Marty Erat and his $4.5 million salary. You brought in Klesla for a day, basically, and Chris Brown. So we'll talk about moving Erat first and foremost, and then we'll get around to Chris Brown as a player that I want to talk about.
Sure. Well, Marty indicated early in the season that he wanted an opportunity elsewhere. I wish that we could have done it then. The NHL is different than it used to be. Years ago, you could move a guy right away. Unfortunately, now you have to wait until the trading deadline. I didn't want to take this long, and Marty didn't either. He's a good guy. It didn't work out for him here, but he didn't want to be here, and we don't want players here that don't want to be here. So we made the move and had to take some salary back. And but what was important was we got a real good prospect in Brown, and in a pick in a draft that's going to be really good.
Yeah, Chris Brown.
2015.
Yeah, and Chris Brown is a player that I've known for years. He grew up in Texas, and I've watched him play.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, national development team guy. He's actually from Plano, Texas, and he very good career at the University of Michigan. Excellent last year in the American Hockey League. I was surprised yesterday when you were able to pick him up. Where do you see him in the future of the Caps?
We really like him. We think he's a power forward. He scored. He was the highest scoring American
29
League
goals.
rookie.
Yeah,
29 goals in the American League. It's pretty darn good. Plays hard. He's big. He's physical. He'll scrap. We like those kind of guys.
All right, and the guy that you made us wait for today, the Yaroslav Halak trade from Michael Neuvert, getting rid of Klesla's salary as well, opening up some more salary space for some future moves, and we'll put you on the spot in a second. But with Halak, what was the thinking in bringing him in?
Well, I guess the bottom line is Michael Neuvert wasn't happy being a number 2. And so we made a move to bring in a guy that I think upgrades the tandem. And we're better now than we were 3 days ago.
And, it was very shocking. It was the last trade of the day that was mentioned here. And then all the capologists on Twitter today were talking about Evgeny Kuznetsov. Do we have any news on that or anything that's happening, or are we at the point where you can talk about him yet?
We don't have anything new. And as I've said for months now, I can't talk about a player that's under contract in another league.
Mm-hmm. All right, and we'll leave it at that. But and the last thing is, throughout the rest of the season, the Caps are on the outside looking in right now, still trying to climb in the top 3 spots of the Metropolitan Division. What are you hopeful for, and what do you expect of the team from here on out?
Well, it's a really good conference, really good division. It's a really good league, and it's a tough schedule the rest of the way. And we can say, well, maybe we just shouldn't play. Or maybe we go hard and see what we're made of. We're going to go hard and see what we're made of.
All right. Well, I want to thank you, George, for joining us today, and good work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's it for George McPhee right now. And obviously the Caps have made some key moves in the last couple of days, adding Dustin Penner, eliminating Martin Erat, bringing in prospect and Chris Brown. Jarel Halak comes in, Michael Neuvert is gone, and Radoslav Klesla was a Washington Capital for basically a day. And we want to thank you for joining us today, and hopefully the Caps can go out tonight in Philadelphia and get themselves a road win and climb back up in the standings in the Eastern Conference and certainly the Metropolitan Division. All right.
This has been a production of Monumental Network, your monumental source for sports and entertainment.